Since the Gillard government announced its intended carbon tax last month, there have been few details on how it will affect South Australia. But a report obtained by 730 South Australia shows the tax will slash the value and life expectancy of the Playford station at Port Augusta to just a few years. And obviously that's raising questions about jobs and the security of electricity generation in this state.
Old, ageing, inefficient, the dinosaur amongst an ageing fleet of coal-fired power stations in Australia.
South Australians are very well aware of the effects of a tight electricity supply. Have suffered more than any other consumers across the country. I suspect there'll be a lot more of that under a carbon tax or a CPRS.
Unlovely and maybe unloved. But right now, life without the Port Augusta power station is also unthinkable.
If you turn them off overnight, you certainly wouldn't get by without them. You absolutely need those two power stations to maintain supply security and reliability.
Port Augusta, in fact, is two separate generators. The northern plant, which opened in the mid-1980s, it provides baseload power, meeting everyday needs. And then there's the much older Playford station, which opened in 1963. It provides intermediate power on high demand days, making the difference between lights on and lights out. Port Augusta supplies 40% of the state's electricity. Both generators use coal mined at Lee Creek and then shipped 250 kilometres along a dedicated rail line. That coal and age, the climate group argues, give Playford a dubious distinction.
In terms of its inefficiency and its carbon intensity, it ranks with Hazelwood in Victoria in producing more emissions per unit of electricity produced than any other power station in the country.
And that puts Port Augusta at the forefront of the debate dominating domestic politics, a carbon tax.
Do I act or not act? Well, I've chosen to act, and we will have a fixed price, like a carbon tax.
This monster tax impacts on everyone and everything. It won't clean up the environment, but it will clean out your wallet.
Electricity industry expert Danny Price has had a long association with South Australia, advising Nick Xenophon during the ETSA sales saga in the late 1990s. His view is a carbon tax spells the end of Playford.
By design, they'll have quite a huge financial effect on both of those power stations. They will lose up to about half their value across those two generators.
This is his latest projection using the federal government's own data. Under a carbon tax, it shows Playford plummeting in value from almost $500 million to just $72 million. The 2009-2010 report from the state government's electricity regulator gives Playford another 2 decades of life. But Danny Price expects a carbon price to slash its economic life expectancy to just 2015.
Well, it'll have to shut. I mean, that's the whole point of these types of schemes, is to try and shut down old high-emission generators. If it didn't achieve that, then the scheme actually wouldn't work.
I think its days are done, and I think probably the owners have realised that for some years and have been worried about what the implications of a carbon tax and carbon trading system will be. And really the only future for that station is to transform into something entirely new.
Danny Price believes the northern generators should continue until the 2030s, when Lee Creek coal is due to run out. Into this uncertain future comes a new owner. In Sydney last Tuesday, Alinta Energy, which owns Port Augusta power stations, gave over control to its lender, the giant financier TPG. The chairman-elect has told 730 SA,
the introduction of a price on carbon will have an impact on the commercial operations of the Flinders power stations at Port Augusta. Until we can engage with the federal government, we are unable to comment on any impact on the power station plant and its employees.
Consumers will pay higher electricity prices, though the federal government promises to compensate households. And in Adelaide on Thursday, Julia Gillard made this promise.
This is the choice we face. Action will protect jobs. Inaction will cost jobs.
But economist John Spear believes job losses in Port Augusta and Lee Creek are all but inevitable.
It will spell the end of jobs in coal mining and coal-fired generation over the short to medium term, and unless those industries are replaced, those generators are replaced with renewable sources, it's going to have a net job loss in South Australia.
The good news, according to Danny Price, is that TPG is very big and very rich and very keen to invest. The bad news, in his view, is that time is short and he's not convinced any new investment would be in Port Augusta. But beyond that, there's a wider question of how will South Australia's electricity sector cope with a carbon tax? And that divides opinion.
There are other alternatives that are available, particularly in South Australia. South Australia has lots of alternative options. It's already showing leadership in terms of investment in renewable energy.
I think South Australia faces more challenges than virtually any other state, simply because it has less access to a broader range of fuels to be able to respond to an emissions trading scheme.